I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
Listen. Now let's talk about December 25th, a special time of year we spread cheer through gifts. Santa, reindeer, mistletoes, and lights, all secular hype with no connection to Christ. But when did it first start? And what is the whole plan? How did we go from Jesus to Frosty the Snowman? To understand, let's travel back on the scene to the 4th century Rome and the Emperor Constantine. Constantine worshipped the pagan god Mithra, whose birthday fell on the 25th of December. They celebrated with feasts and killed the beasts, had human sacrifices and orgies in the streets. They hated other faiths, turned church to mausoleums, fed Christians to lions, and watched from the Colosseum. But Constantine was smart, he played his part, combined both religions controlling the Roman hearts. Mithra was the light god they based off Apollo. Apollo was the Greek god they based off of Horus. Horus was the sun god they merged with the son of God that all culminates on today, the winter solstice. Santa Claus, Saint Nick, as you suppose him, superimposed the Scandinavian god Odin. He had a long white beard and a red suit, rode a magical sleigh. Our children deserve the truth. Christmas trees are accustomed from the teaching described in the scripture explicitly for the heathens. Jeremiah chapter 10, check your Bible. They cut down trees and decorate them as idols. Parallel to the phallic symbols in Washington, the West been obsessed with the ancient Egyptian monuments, stolen by Romans and spread through the area. Before Christ was born, they called it the Saturnalia. To worship Saturn, you starting to see the pattern. Pagan folklores at the celebration's core. The Puritans saw Christmas as evil. In the northern colonies, they even made it illegal. It was more like Mardi Gras, sex and prostitution. It didn't come back until after the revolution. Eventually, commercialism takes a hold. Now it's all about making a profit from products sold. Christmas sales, holiday getaways. Does a retail display dictate the way we pray? We overspend and extend beyond our means. Cut a check or go in credit card debt just to be seen. Santa Claus pagan, Christmas tree pagan. The Roman emperor either murdered or enslaved him. So think again when you start to spread cheer. Until then, happy Kwanzaa. On to the new year. Yeah.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
What's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like right here at Black Power Media. Again, that was the MC Locksmith. Somebody sent that to me on Twitter. Thought I would start the day off, given that it is Christmas Eve for many of you. Happy winter solstice for others of you. Happy Kwanzaa. And I'm honestly not sure. To be honest, I don't follow Kwanzaa like that, so I don't know what day we're on or whatever. But happy Kwanzaa, happy Hanukkah, happy whatever you celebrate. Get it in, enjoy yourself, tap into the African origins of it. And for my Jews out there, you can check Freud's work, Moses and Monotheism, for the African origins as well. Anyway, what's up, good people? Welcome everybody who's going to see this live, who are here live now. Welcome, welcome. Please invite somebody and have them join you. To those who are seeing this or hearing this later on any of your favorite podcast platforms, peace to you as well and welcome. And again, shout out to the MC Locksmith. We should have him on at some point, actually. I've been checking his stuff for years. And there's a lot of dope material. So yeah, so let's see if we can work that out as well. Got a big show. Brother Kaba is going to come through in the second hour. Dr. Ọbádélé Kambon is going to come on. And in the interim, we're going to talk a little bit about just a little bit about the Matrix and a little bit more on some crypto fantasies as well. And maybe one or two other things, maybe even including Kim Potter's conviction and what may seem as a surprise. I admit I'm surprised. I thought for sure she was going to get convicted, but I mean, I'm sorry. I thought for sure she was going to get off. Sorry about that. Because anyway, what little I saw, what I checked in on the trial and saw the way the case was being laid out, it seemed like there was going to be enough room for people to say she, you know, made an honest mistake, more or less. That was, what's the word? That was all set in motion by the flight of Dante Wright. But anyway, at the same time, I don't, certainly don't want people to get carried away with claiming victories in a changed world. But I don't know. We'll see. I see Brother Kaba is just about set, and I'll bring him on in a quick second. But I did want to, if I could, what I did want to do is, well, let me see if he's ready here. Brother Kaba, good morning. How you doing today?
I'm well. Good morning.
Have
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Hey man. Do you? We could probably get into some of this with Dr. Kambon later on too, in terms of the African origins and continuities, etc., and so forth. Or I think a phrase he likes to use: fakers and frauds, and how they've interpreted things. But do you celebrate Kwanzaa? Do you follow?
I do.
I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
Where are we on that?
It starts on Sunday, so
okay, very good.
Yeah.
So it always starts after Christmas.
It's always the 26th.
It's always the 26th. Okay, my bad.
Through the 1st, through January 1st.
Okay, right on.
Yeah, always.
All right. Well, happy Kwanzaa, certainly, in advance to you and everyone else. Did you see the new Matrix by any chance?
I did not. I saw y'all talking about it though the other day. I haven't checked it out. But so far, some people whose opinions I respect, including yours, have had made me want to see it, because I probably wasn't going to see it because the last couple of them were horrible. But I might check it out.
I honestly, I don't want to go so far as to say I'm recommending it, and I don't want to certainly and what my man Dr. Burroughs put together here on his website, drumsintheglobalvillage.com, his 66-word review. As he writes, to choose it to be fully awake no matter where you are. Well, I'm sorry, to choose is to be fully awake no matter where you are. A very meta, refreshingly simple story about two super white people and their black, brown, and yellow friends. By stripping the story to the core, it becomes hyper accessible and enjoyable. But I get the feeling that this franchise's time has passed, that Neo is no longer new, Trinity no longer the magic number. End quote. And I think that captures, yeah.
I mean, spoken and with that very short review, he's already catapulted himself to the top of the line for Hater of the Year. Once again, the brother Dr.
It's going to be hard to
Todd
get that from him. He attempts each year to win it. I mean, he is consciously trying to win it. He's acknowledged that. So we do have to recognize that. And I think he captured. So what I did think I liked about it. I mean, first of all, I just like the like many people, I'm drawn to the underlying theme of revolution. How that's defined, how that's presented is obviously very different in different spaces, and that's evident in the film in terms of to his point, that is Brother Todd's point. There is a clear attempt, and what I've been seeing on a lot of the YouTube review channels is, I don't know, man. This is what I find myself collapsing this with the Kim Potter verdict and response.
Hmm.
That on the one hand, there are these surface level symbolic attempts to show an advance or change in society, as in the wokeness of the Matrix. Now, and spoiler alert, just a little bit at least, is it? Well, I won't go too far, but there, as he says here, there is a clear attempt to be diverse, and I don't mean just black and white. I mean, they try. There's everybody. There are allusions, at least even to trans and LGBTQ, if not overt. I probably put them in the allusion category, but there is how should I put it? Challenges by gender to the traditional Neo story and savior story. But at the end of the day, it's still very symbolic, very, very woke. And what I'm seeing in a lot of the review shows is a backlash, not justifying it, just I think it's interesting, a backlash among white, nominally, I don't know, probably maybe there are right-wingers, but centrists and liberals who are fed up with Hollywood forcing all of this wokeness and on them as audience members, which I ultimately understand and recognize is also a response to what I see as the false symbolic nature of it in the first place. So they see it again from a reactionary, conservative, white supremacist lens. I'm seeing this the fakeness, symbolic nature of the presentation from a very different perspective. But anyway, that's just you know. But then in terms of the movie, like, I don't want to see, I have to admit that I wanted to see the original Mr. Smith, and apparently Hugo Weaving, I think is his name. This was just an issue of timing, schedule, and whatever. He wanted to come back, and they replaced him with the dude who I actually liked in the series Mindhunters, about the history of the FBI investigating serial killers. I thought that was a fascinating series, and the dude that plays the new Mr. Smith was in that. I don't see him doing well in this. I don't want to see, you know, I wasn't moved by Neil Patrick Harris's character. You know, I wanted to go back to when I didn't recognize everybody. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, I think that helped initially.
What about the Lawrence Fishburne? What about the guy that replaced Lawrence Fishburne? How'd he do?
I think he is. I don't think this is about his talent or capability, and certainly he brought a swag and a style to it. But I don't think the story helped him. I don't think what they did in trying to tell and explain why he was there and Fishburne's character wasn't. As one of the reviewers put it, I really agree with this. The problem with this film is that so much of it was trying to explain why Fishburne and Hugo Weaving as Mr. Smith weren't the actors in the film. So they had to like do all this funky stuff to try to explain why, and it wasn't really clear. Even after watching, you know, I did kind of do a rabbit hole thing on it, and even after doing that, I'm still not clear how they were doing this, and what they were trying to say. And it would have been better, and especially when I read that Fishburne said
that they didn't even
he
ask
wanted
him
to come back. They didn't even ask him.
Yeah.
So I was like, and I didn't know that till after I saw the movie. I might have boycotted it just on that if I had known that they had done.
No, I saw
like
that last week. I saw it last week where he said that because somebody asked him, and he was like, why he wasn't going to be in it. He's like, you got to ask them, because I was never asked. You know, it's like, so I thought that was strange because he was such an iconic, you know, character, man. I mean, yeah.
And I never felt like they dealt properly with what was his crisis in the original. If you realize that everything you've dedicated your life to is fantasy or myth, again, to the point of Freud's Moses and monotheism and what happens to Jews collectively, psychologically, if they realize Moses was an African. But what happens? And Morpheus's character just kind of has like a blank kind of look moment in one of the earlier, you know, like we don't really see him go through, and then they just flash forward 60 years later in this one and put him in a statue and give some exposition from Jada Pinkett Smith, who, again, I've never been the biggest fan of her as an actress. And then the prosthetics and the makeup to make her 60 years old, I was just like, I'm not feeling this. And then she wasn't that central a character. Like the character is in, I don't know. I wasn't feeling that. I wasn't feeling that, especially if you're not going to have Fishburne back in there. So anyway, I don't know, man. It was, you know, I'm glad I didn't have to go anywhere to watch it. I'll say that. You know, and some of what I thought they could have done, you know, like when they update how they come in and out of the Matrix, you know, it's updated technology. Some of that is pretty cool. And I do actually like the Asian woman who is like the new Trinity, so to speak. I don't know if that's a good way of characterizing her, but I like her. I thought she did well. I would have liked to see, I would have liked to see them do something different with Yahya in this joint and give the brother a chance. Yeah, I just don't think he was given a chance. I'll put it that way. So I didn't really. I didn't.
The backstory. One of the kind of backstories to the Matrix, and also the Terminator. I think it was Terminator. Was the sister by the name of Sylvia Stewart over in L.A. who claims that was her story.
I think it's Sophia Stewart.
So Sophia Stewart. Yes, thank you. And that those folks stole it. Those siblings stole it.
I'm very glad you brought that up. And I have to say, shout out to, you know, our home WPFW. One of my, and I will use the word regret. I have a few regrets about my time there. And one of them is that we did not preserve the interview we did with the lawyer of the DC sniper, Malvo. Which I think was fascinating and laid out or offered up a different view on what was happening with that case. And one that we did with Sophia Stewart. We interviewed her about all of this. And I don't remember enough of the details other than I have to say what I do remember walking away from was that I didn't think she made enough of her case in that interview. I wanted to believe her, but I just felt like it wasn't compelling enough. Like there was and she wasn't, I felt like forthcoming enough. Like, you know, while we're interviewing you and we want you got to give us, but I have no doubt that it's true though.
She just didn't do a good job. Some people are just not good at arguing their own case, you know, because she's just more of a creative and all of that.
And then there was, and this is the part I definitely identify with. She was pissed. So like I definitely identify with at moments, you know, being upset to the point where I'm not able to articulate well enough. And if I did feel like I'm upset enough when I see people just out here who I think have ripped me off without credit, never mind if you turned it into a multi-billion-dollar franchise and left me out hanging high and dry, I would be furious. But I also think that if I remember correctly, she was saying there was something ongoing in terms of some litigation,
right? That
subsequent to our interview didn't go her way. So there was like she, you know. But anyway, I just wish we had that audio. And honestly, I don't even know where she is. Is she still in the mix? Is she? I don't even know if I don't know anything about her.
I don't know
at this point.
That's a good question. I don't know.
But she did say that the basis of the Terminator and the Matrix series all came from her work. And again, what little I've seen, even in academia, even in my own humble career, I have seen my work end up in other people's under people's name, and called them out on it, and was furious about it, and was told just to make a point, was told by a number of people that my anger got the better of me and I didn't lay out my case well enough. And all I'm saying is, and at the time I was like, I don't give a damn. You know damn well what was done.
Right.
But anyway, so from what has happened to me, what I've read about has happened obviously in Hollywood and elsewhere.
It happens all the time. Happens in music. It happens all the time.
I won't give any names, but many years ago, I went on I was a passenger, not a participant, but a passenger on a speaking tour featuring two prominent speakers. And the junior of the two would lament routinely off the record how the senior was constantly taking his lyrics, as he said. He's biting my lyrics. So from one presentation to the next, he was having to constantly change up his presentation because it kept showing up in the senior's work, and then he would come on, and, you know, and it would look very differently. So anyway, you know, I mean, everywhere.
And who was that again?
No, exactly.
It didn't work. Thought I'd see if I can.
I did. Yeah.
And shout out to that student that showed up, you know, a couple of weeks ago, you know, that you haven't seen since it was warm outside too. But
by the way, that person, you know what? Let me pull that up real quick because that's funny. I'm glad you meant, because that person had some company join them this week. And I did pretty well. It was really only two, but here, this was it. Yeah, grade submitted, semester over, and that student I haven't seen since it was warm outside. We talked, and I got another one. Oh, Dr. Ball, I just was so confused. I didn't. I'm like,
I remember that, man. When I was in school, I never taught, but I remember when I was in school, be like, Cat, she'd be like, I ain't seen this. I thought he dropped out. You know, he's still here. And then he comes in, it's like December. He's trying to, it's like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. It's too late, brother.
And I honestly, and actually it is. I mean, even at this point, if I wanted to, there's nothing I could do about it. But I'm like, I cannot do any more, you know. I mean, to help you through, I need some effort anyway. So yeah. Okay. So again, I want to thank a lot, you know, again, it's all relative, obviously. It's not, you know, but I apologize, and I do need to figure out a way to do better, to organize this better, because I do not remember and credit specifically the people who keep sending me all of these materials. I get more than I could keep up with, but I don't want it to stop. I deeply appreciate it. I like if people who don't know me think of me as the buying power guy, or now the crypto criticizing guy, or whatever. So I get all this stuff. And I got sent this article the other day that came out in Financial Times, which again I recognize is not, an African radical left militant publication, but I had said something to the effect on Twitter the other day that just saying that I think crypto is a Ponzi scheme. And a couple people have gotten back to me saying, well, technically speaking, it doesn't fit the requirements of a Ponzi scheme. Now, when I'm saying Ponzi scheme, I'm simply meaning what we're going to get to in this article, just a scam. But there are specifics and details specific to the original Ponzi and his scheme that don't necessarily apply here. This article is actually suggesting that it's worse, that is Bitcoin specifically is worse than a Ponzi scheme. And I will also admit, and we can read through this, at least some of it together, it's not terribly long, I don't understand every single thing that is being argued here, so I won't claim that. But essentially, what this is it says it's a guest post by Robert McCauley, a non-resident senior fellow at Boston University's Global Development Policy Center and associate member of the Faculty of History at the University of Oxford. In this post, McCauley argues that comparing Bitcoin to a Ponzi scheme is unfair to Ponzi schemes, which I thought was so. Going through at least some of it, it starts off. Bitcoin is off to its all-time high of $69,000 set on November 9th, 2021. It suffered a wrenching $12,000 flat crash over the first weekend in December amid accounts of leveraged positions being closed out. And then, even at the current price of $49,000, guests on financial TV news continue to tout it as the best performing asset of the last N years, where N can be just about any number from 1 to 10. They also increasingly judge it as a credible investment in its own right. This contradicts the long-standing skeptical view by many economists and others that what Bitcoin really is, in effect, is a Ponzi scheme. Brazilian computer scientist Jorge Stolfi is one voice who has contended this. His view is based on the following observations. And this is where I'm, this is where I'm coming from. 1, investors buy in the expectation of profits. So that is, people, and particularly the Black spokespeople championing this, are telling their audiences to invest in Bitcoin with expectations of profits. In fact, the author of Bitcoin in Black America argues so much so that you cannot lose money. So it's not just an expectation of profits, it's a guarantee that you will not lose money from his argument. But okay. Number 2, that expectation is sustained by the profits of those that cash out. All right. So that the expectation of profits is maintained or sustained by the profits of those that cash out. So if you cash out, having brought, captured the investments of others, those are the profits. 3, but there is no external source for those profits. They come entirely from new investments. Again, well, just that. There's no wealth being generated anywhere other than other people investing behind you. And then 4, the operators take away a large portion of the money. All of this rings true, but in calling Bitcoin a Ponzi scheme, critics are arguably being too kind on 2 counts. First, Bitcoin doesn't have the same end game as a Ponzi scheme. Second, it constitutes a deeply negative sum game from a broad social perspective. On the first count, it's worth assessing how it compares to the original scheme devised by Charles Ponzi. In 1920, Ponzi promised 50% on a 45-day investment and managed to pay to a number of his investors, to pay this to a number of investors. He suffered and managed to survive investor runs until eventually the scheme collapsed less than a year into it. So he survived people taking their money out in advance of him being able to use it to pay others until the scheme eventually collapsed. In the largest and probably longest running Ponzi scheme in history, Bernie Madoff paid returns of around 1% a month. He offered to cash out his scheme's participants both the original sum invested and the return thereon. As a result, the scheme could and did suffer a run. The great financial crisis of 2008 led to a cascade of redemptions by participants and the scheme's collapse. But the resolution of Madoff's scheme, you know what? Geechee Motivator sent me this. My bad. Shout out to him. Just got remembered that. Shout out to him for this. But the resolution of Madoff's scheme has extended beyond its collapse on account of the remarkable and ongoing legal proceedings. These have outlived Madoff himself, who died in early 2021. In other words, people who lost their money have been chased down, as this article gets into some detail that admittedly goes beyond me, has chased down people who ended up with ill-gotten gains off of Madoff's scheme and returned some of it, as is described in the next paragraph, to I guess some of his clients. Many are unaware that a bankruptcy trustee, Irving H. Picard, has doggedly and successfully pursued those who took more money out of the scheme than they put in. He even managed to follow the money into offshore dollar accounts, litigating a controversial extraterritorial reach of U.S. law all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Of the $20 billion in recognized original investments in the scheme, which the victims had been told had reached a value more than 3 times that sum, some $14 billion, a striking 70%, has been recovered and distributed. Claims of up to $1.6 million are being fully repaid. By contrast to investments with Madoff, Bitcoin is bought not as an income-earning asset, but rather as a zero-coupon perpetual. In other words, it promises nothing as a running yield and never matures with a required terminal payment. It follows that it cannot suffer a run. The only way a holder of Bitcoin can cash out is by a sale to someone else. And that is, for me, the basics. The article does get much more into detail, again, beyond my specific, my current understanding. But that is part of the simplicity of my own conclusions, having looked into this and looked at even just the frame of it, and not seeing anyone positively argue against what I'm saying. I just don't. Anyway, and the point being here, at least, is that while people are claiming that crypto and blockchain that allows for anonymous extra state exchange, leave out the fact that, again, we shouldn't want an unregulated, uncheckable, untraceable exchange economy in a society. We should want regulated political power over that economy and the exchange that goes on in that economy. If someone gets ripped off, they should have legal recourse and support to get their money back. If someone forgets a PIN, they shouldn't have to lose all of their money. And if they want to take their money out, they should be able to do that. But with Bitcoin, none of that is possible. The only way you make money on Bitcoin is if other people come in and buy it, as I've been saying, thus elevating the value of what you have. Okay. Let me just see this a little bit more here. Bitcoin's collapse would look very different to that of Ponzi's or Madoff's scheme. One possible trigger could be the collapse of a big so-called stable coin, that is ersatz US dollars, that have sprung up to provide a cash leg for cryptocurrency transactions. These unregulated money, because as I saw somebody argue elsewhere, to buy Bitcoin, you need US or some other established currency. These unregulated money market funds have been sold as dollar stand-ins with safe assets that match their outstanding liabilities. Given the lack of regulation and disclosure, it is not hard to imagine a big stablecoin breaking the buck, as occurred with a regulated money market that fund that held Lehman paper in 2008. This could so disrupt the whole ecology of crypto that there could be no bids for Bitcoin. The market might close indefinitely. In this event, and honestly, I won't claim to understand this, Brother Kaba. I don't know if you get any of this or people in the chat. I don't fully understand this part, in the reference to Lehman Brothers and what in paper and money market. I won't claim to understand that. What the part I'm focused on was initially here, how this does fit similarly with a Bitcoin. I mean, with a Ponzi scheme, and then with that point just a moment ago of there being no recourse if people are ripped off. There's no returning that money. There's no possibility of it being returned. It goes in. There is more discussion here of the electricity and that goes into this, or what they call the environmental externality. That is, you're passing off the damage you cause to someone else to clean up, that is the rest of us, in terms of the environmental damage. But as it says here, in a crash, the holders of Bitcoin will collectively have lost what they have paid the miners for their Bitcoin. The sum may not be far from the sum originally invested with Madoff after accounting for inflation, but Bitcoin holders will have no one to pursue to recover this sum. It will simply have gone up in smoke, a social loss. The holders of Bitcoin would then only wish it had been a Ponzi scheme. All right, Brother Kaba, let me invite any of your anything. I
mean, you know, more of the same. We see. I really, my only real response was this. I wanted to share my screen because it kind of ties into what you were just talking about. And I don't have audio, so I'm not going to do that. So yeah, here we go.
And by the way, just while you're doing that, a quick shout out to my comrades in the AAPRP. Holding it down, doing some work. I had to step away from. I wasn't feeling very well yesterday. Anyway, but it's not that serious. Just a little bit of. I think it's just because my wife is out of town and I cannot sleep and I don't feel good. I think that's all it is. That's what it is. Honestly, I think that's what it is.
That brother's still winning points, boy. He's still trying to get them points in the bank. He's still trying
man, I'm telling you, no. That's facts. That's absolutely facts. It's just the reality of the situation.
Hey, man. Hey.
You know, but anyway, okay. Actually, you're sharing your whole screen down there, by the way.
Yeah. So there we go. What about this?
You're going to send us down the rabbit hole. There we go. There it is.
All right.
All
man.
Right. That's it. Yeah.
So this is from Jacobin. So this is kind of like, it's written in jest, but I think it has, you know, it's thanks to her investing prowess, the Speaker of the House wealth grew by an estimated $16.7 million last year, just as Americans, you know, fell into poverty, COVID-19 pandemic. Long live the Queen of Stonks, as they call her. And basically, they went on to say that people that are were following Reddit memes and Dogecoin. Remember the whole Reddit thing last year where people were kind of they stopped doing that and they started following TikTok and Twitter accounts that have come up. And basically, these people are following Pelosi and her
I saw that.
Her stock moves. So you know, it's
invest
amazing.
with Pelosi. Did she buy up some Bitcoin?
You know, they did mention. Let me see here. Pelosi became Wall Street mega influencer. Just look at the numbers since last year. She and her husband Paul traded over $50 million in assets, 69% as of October. And they did mention Dogecoin and some of the things in here. Let's see. Social media.
That's in Alphabet, the owner of
Alphabet.
Google.
Yeah,
that's good.
And you know, so basically, they just go into the fact that she's done all this investing. And
wait. At the time, wait, don't move it. The top Democrats, Pelosi included, squawked about new federal regulations to hold the big four, Google, Apple, Amazon, Facebook to account. Yet they dragged their feet to build the strength of the privacy. Meanwhile, more than 2/3 of Pelosi's stock transactions since 2020 have included those tech giants. Okay, wow. Wow.
And even Roblox, which if you have any children, they're into that Roblox. Like seriously, you get Robux and Roblox and all of that. And it's funny because the Roblox looks like the video games that we had when we were coming up that were like real simplistic, you know. But they get a chance to build all of these worlds and houses, and it's just amazing, particularly when you think about how the technology is advanced. You know, in these years where things look so realistic that the children are into those things. But I think just the whole notion of being able to build something, I guess, is something that made them, you know, that makes it popular to children. But basically, you know, they come down, they talk about Warren Ocasio-Cortez calling for members of Congress to be barred from playing Wall Street. I
was looking at that paragraph. So Elizabeth Warren and AOC get to come back and look like leftists again by being critical of this, but they don't do anything to challenge Pelosi's power. So that's
the whole point.
That's so whack. And I did see a video clip of Pelosi being asked about this, and she just said, "No, there shouldn't be regulation. We should be allowed to participate in the
market, in the free market. This is a capitalistic, you know, we should be able to, you know, so yeah, that was her whole response.
I think it's funny. If I did invest, I would follow her. I would just follow her lead on that.
And then meanwhile, you have this situation right here.
Oh, okay, right.
87-year-old woman's Social Security benefits denied until she turns 100. Now she's 87. And they say that
until she turns 100.
Until she turns 100. So she's down in the Tampa area. She's Tampa. Her name was Mamie Walker, 87 years old. You know, and like a lot of elders, you know, she's living, you know, month to month on Social Security. And basically, they say that she has student loan, you know, payments that need to be that are overdue. But the problem is that she never went to school. Like she never went to college. So she didn't have.
But wait a minute. If she had gone to college and had student loans due, that would disqualify her from receiving her Social Security payments?
That was new to me, but this is a letter right here.
Damn, I'm in trouble.
The letter. It says that the letter that was sent to her showed that she would have her entire check withheld each month until the overpayment was recovered. In September 2034. And again, that's when she'll be 100. 2 years ago, Mrs. Walker encountered another situation where her benefits had been canceled after she was told that she owed more than $200,000 in student loan payments, even though she never pursued a college degree. She got grown children. Of course, she said that they don't have the money to help her. So meanwhile, you have them basically making up stuff to take a black woman, elder's Social Security. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have people like Pelosi, you know, playing the market, making all kinds of millions of dollars.
2 years ago, I think it is now, I went through it with Social Security. My mother's payments all of a sudden were being redirected to rotating bank accounts. And she, for a better part of a year, was not getting her money. And this led to problems we never recovered from, frankly. And in trying to get her money back, get her payments back, because anyway, I'm starting to get like, the long story short is Social Security is so shady. The process to deal with them was so shady to track down, to do the bulk of the legwork that I had to do to track down where the money was going. Meanwhile, struggling to prove I was my mother's son and legally her power of attorney. I had more trouble proving myself to them to take over, to correct the problems, than apparently these thieves that I suspect had relationships with people inside Social Security had in moving out. Every month a new bank account emerged to receive my mother's check.
Wow.
And Wells Fargo, I don't really know, was one of the banks that we never had a bank account with. It was like, they were like, oh, I really don't. So I was like, well, how did somebody set up a bank account? If they never even had to walk into the bank. PNC was another one. I don't know how this bank account popped up out of nothing to receive your mother's check, and no, you cannot access it. And yes, the money's gone. A year or more of this before we finally got this straight. And again, the problems are not recoverable. It will never be recoverable. I was in there one day, and in Social Security, they have people armed. They have an armed security guard in the room. Yeah. And I remember that I was getting all this back and forth with the people behind the counter, people accusing me of stealing my mother's money, people accusing, and at one point, my voice elevated and dude stood up. And I turned around and pointed to him and I said, that's why you're here. Because these people continue to rip us off and they know it. That's why you there with your gun. About 6 months later was that story that came out, I want to say in Virginia or West Virginia, that the dude went into Social Security and shot the place up. I'm not advocating this. Okay, right. I want to be clear. But to the Chris Rock joke, the old O.J. Simpson joke, I understand. I absolutely understand. And when I read the story, his story was exactly what mine was. There was mismanagement with my mother's funds. I could not get people to listen. We lost all this money. My mother lost her house. Like all this stuff was happening. Wow. And they didn't want to do anything about it. So yeah, I walked in there and I shot the joint up. I was like, see, I told you. I was like, I told you. Anyway, It's terrible, man. It's terrible. So to see that story, unfortunately, I'm not surprised.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was much more mismanagement and people
Oh,
losing all kinds of money.
Yeah, like you said, people on the inside. I wouldn't be surprised if it were an inside job for sure. You know,
I mean, one of the women that worked there, and I have to say, it was a sister too. I'll never forget that too. It really pissed me off. But she intentionally gave me misleading directions about how to deal with this and set me back months. And it came to find out later that it was intentional. Anyway, it was a lot of crazy, and the stress and the resources that I would have had to expend to really pursue this, we just didn't, obviously don't have. But it was terrible, man. So I'm sorry to hear that about it. And yeah. And if we do, if we have to have our student loan payments paid off before we get our Social Security, then I'm gonna lose out on them too.
Yeah, and speaking of student loan payments, you heard about your boy Jim Crow, saying he's gonna extend the moratorium on payments. But again, he promised
to May now, right?
To May 1st. But he promised during the campaign run that he was gonna, at least forgive up to 10,000, and that would have been right up my alley because that's just about what I got left, in terms of my.
Oh wow! Congratulations.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it. And I'm like, I don't want to pay that. I want to pay the rest of it. So
hey, I'm in that category where 10 grand won't help.
Well, listen, I thought that I had paid them off. I thought that I had paid it off a couple of years ago, and then all of a sudden they come out the blue with, well, you actually owe, this amount more because of this and that. I'm like, it's been like 23 years since I got out of school. All of a sudden you're gonna hit me with like, you owe this too? I'm like, I got letters that I'm free and clear. And so now you're telling me I still owe. And they were like, yeah, well, sorry, that's just what it is. So it's just like they just find all kinds of ways to squeeze money out of us. And with Social Security, remember, folks have been saying that Social Security is on the table in terms of it being cut. Even Joe Biden
has said that.
Yeah.
For years he has said that. Back when he was in the Senate, he was saying that.
Yeah, I played some stuff of that, some clips of that, him saying that, which reminds me too, on the show Monday, I had a brother a brother called me after the show, and usually I don't answer the phone at the show, but I picked up the phone, and this brother started berating me about how I was talking bad about Biden like last year during the election, because I was just reminding people of how Biden, what he was. And I would play clips and all kinds of things, share articles and this and that. And we were on the phone for about 30 minutes, and he was just going off about, you shouldn't, we just need to get rid of Trump. He's from the island somewhere, because I asked him where he's from. He's like, I'm from Silver Spring. I'm like, brother, where you from? Like, he's like, I'm from the Caribbean, But I just don't think it's right for you to say the things you said about Joe Biden and this and that. And so we just went back and forth, but I was just explaining, I told him Joe Biden's record, this and that. Oh, it doesn't matter. We just need to get Trump out. I said, well, at the end of the day, policy-wise, and people don't like this, but policy-wise, Joe Biden is way worse than Trump, because his policies have disaffected black people way more than Trump. This guy got 40 years worth of policy that he's written, that I wrote the damn bill.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That I wrote the damn bill and all of that stuff. I mean, and he was talking about how racist Trump was. I said one of his boys was freaking Jesse Helms and all. He was working with them, and Strom Thurmond and all them cats. This is not our friend.
It's funny. So, my bad. Go ahead.
No, but that was basically it.
Well, I thought, since we got a few more minutes here before we get to Dr. Kambon, I wanted to let me just play a little bit of this from yesterday's press conference, because I actually think it relates to what you were saying about Biden. Because every time I see, what happened to the? Oh, I had it set up at the joint. Hold on. Let me move it forward here. Every time I see Brother Keith Ellison, first of all, I think of his that classic exchange he had with Dhoruba some years ago at some conference where he goes back and forth with Dhoruba about what is possible within the Democratic Party. And here he's announcing the conviction of Officer Potter for killing Dante Wright. And I keep reminded, the only reason he's in this position is because Obama and Tom Perez kicked him out of the leadership of the Democratic Party.
Everybody. My name is Keith Ellison. I'm the Attorney General for the state of Minnesota. At this moment, I ask us all to reflect upon the life of Dante Wright and who he could have been had he had a chance to grow up. At 20, Dante could have done anything. Maybe he could have gone into the building trades. Maybe he could have started a business. What we know is that he was a young, new dad, and he was so proud of his son, Dante Jr. We know that he loved his mom, and he loved his dad, and he loved his siblings, and his big, beautiful family. He had his whole life in front of him, and he could have become anyone. All of us miss out on who Dante could have been. And no one has missed him more than his parents, Katie and Aubrey, and their children. I'm very mindful today that there will be an empty chair at the Wright family dinner during the holidays, and that saddens me. And once again, I extend my deepest condolences to you. With the jury finding Kimberly Potter guilty today of manslaughter in the first degree and manslaughter in the second degree in connection with Dante's death, we have a degree of accountability for Dante's death. Accountability is not justice. Justice is restoration. Justice would be restoring Dante to life and making the Wright family whole again. Justice is beyond the reach that we have in this life for Dante. But accountability is an important step, a critical, necessary step on the road to justice for us all. I want to thank the jury for their careful attention and deliberation and for their service to the people of Minnesota. I want to thank all of the witnesses who testified and who came forward with what they knew about this case. I especially want to thank my remarkable team. When I took this case, I said it would be difficult to prosecute because history has shown that trying cases like this one is difficult. This team did not shy away from the challenge, and the people of Hennepin County and the American people and the people of Minnesota, what they saw in the courtroom was the fruit of many, many hours of labor and hard work and planning. For my office, I want to thank specifically Mr. Matthew Frank. I want to thank.
He's about to
Aaron
lose the
Eldridge.
plot
I
here
want
in
to
a
thank Eric
second,
Miller and David Voigt, and
as they
Dion
say
Dodd.
in world football
But this
commentary.
team wouldn't be much of anything if it were not for the amazing work of Joshua Larson, Raul Shaw, and Vernona Boswell. Thank you, Vernona. I also must thank colleagues who did not work on the legal matter, but worked on the community. And that is John Stiles, Keon Ducey.
So one question I do have, and I don't think we can answer
Thank you to
now,
you all for
is
your hard work.
what was the difference in
I
this
also want to
case
thank the many staff
and
at the Bureau of
and
Criminal
that of
Apprehension
Philando
who worked
Castillo,
on this case. The
whose
staff of the Hennepin County Attorney's
officers
Office
were not
and
convicted.
Washington County Attorney's Office.
He had a gun.
Specifically, I want to thank Mr. Drew Evans and those who testified
Probably.
in this case, like Agent Phil, who did a fine job and who put in many long
But you
hours
see
of
Dante,
appreciated service.
I was like, man, they're
The
not
next
going
step
to. You
in
see
this
him
case
break
is
away from dudes and
And
putting them
all
in
I will say
handcuffs
about
and
that
try to
today
drive
is
off.
that we have to look
Mhm.
forward to
I said, damn
court
it, that's
setting
going to do him in.
calendar date for that hearing, and at that time we will make our appropriate arguments within the context.
I just wanted to play
of the
one other part where he
think we have
loses
a
the
date, do
plot
we
here
not?
real quick,
What is that
but
one?
I thought it was
Anybody remember the date? March 8th. My thoughts are also with Ms. Potter today. She has gone from being an esteemed member of the community and honored member of a noble profession to being convicted of a serious crime.
Mm.
I don't wish that on anyone, but it was our responsibility as the prosecution, as ministers of justice, to pursue justice wherever it led, and the jury found the facts. My thoughts are also with those who work in law enforcement and
yeah,
public
this
safety.
was my part right here.
We hold you in high regard. and we also hold you to high standards. We don't want you to be discouraged. Your community respects and appreciates you. We want you to uphold the highest ideals of our society and ideals of safety. And when a member of your profession is held accountable, it does not diminish you. In fact, it shows. It shows the whole world that those of you who enforce the law are also willing to live by it. And that's a good thing.
All right, I'm gonna leave it there for now, at least. But again, I admit being surprised at the conviction. Oh, you're right over there.
I'm losing it like him.
At least it was the camera falling and not you. I was like, oh
Right.
no, what was going? Anyway, but yeah. I admit being a little, you know, I'm between this and the Arbery trial, and you know, I admit some surprise, and anyway, I guess that's really it. Other than, as I said, every time I see Keith Ellison, I think of the Daruba exchange, and then the fact that you're only there because they kicked you out of the leadership of the Democratic Party,
Right.
In part because you had said something positive about Louis Farrakhan back in the 90s. It was like,
Yeah. They never forget, boy.
I'm like, what? But yeah, anyway, so yeah.
And they tied that into the fact that he was like what, the first Muslim member of Congress or something like that.
That's right.
And they tried
That's
to,
right.
you know, even though he was from a whole different sect of Islam and all of that. So but you know, it doesn't really matter to some of these people. You had white folks shooting up people who were Sikhs because they thought they were Muslim. I don't even remember that. It might have been somewhere up there in Minnesota, someplace up there.
Yeah,
in the Midwest.
I think it happened repeatedly,
Yeah.
particularly after 9/11, and which reminded me, man, one thing we didn't get to, and we're going to get to our guest here in a second, is similar to that. You just got me thinking about how, as someone pointed out after a recent story of the last dog recovered from Michael Vick,
Yeah, I saw
passed
that.
away.
That was me. I sent that to you.
Did you send that to me?
I sent
See,
that
I
to
can't
you.
remember. My bad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And somebody I saw on Twitter got it exactly right. Said you tell us to get over slavery, but
Right.
you won't even forgive Michael Vick. You know,
Yeah.
after he did his time, lost his career, and I still don't agree with that. And I still remember when I took my oldest daughter to her first rally, and some PETA representative tried to come get me to sign and I snapped on her. I have to admit, I was like, shame
About
on
Michael
you. How
Vick?
dare you? Yeah, she tried to get me to sign a petition to get Michael Vick locked up. This was back when it was first popping off. And I said, how dare you come at me with some nonsense, try to put this black man in jail, lose his career over whatever and I'm a dog lover. I'm an animal lover, dog owner, all of that stuff. But no, I was like, absolutely, he should not go to jail and lose his career. You better get that paper out of my face. Better get it out of my face.
And again, they're never, I don't see them, and I can't say never because I don't, but I have never seen them come with that kind of energy when, for instance, a black person is killed by the cops and then the cops get off. Or even the case where the cops don't get off, just the fact that a black person gets killed by the police, I don't see them saying, well, you know, black people are sentient beings as well, and so they should be, you know, protected and honored and all of that.
And I know some of them do have the same energy, but I don't know to what extent PETA representatives.
That's what I mean.
But,
yeah, that's what I mean.
No, but I mean in terms of what I'm about to say, in terms of like, are you going after Purdue Farms and McDonald's and all? You know what I'm saying? You talk about abuse and mass murder, genocide of animals.
Well, they do.
You gonna talk about?
They actually do. They actually do a lot of work around that. And some of them,
are they signing petitions? Get these CEOs locked up?
I don't know about that. But they do. They definitely do demonstrations and they do die-ins and all kinds of, stuff like that. Yeah, I was just. And some of them go real hard. Like they get like militant, physical.
I'm saying I have seen some. That's why I'm saying I don't know to what extent they're PETA related, but I'm just saying like.
But they don't do that around black people, is what I'm saying. They don't go that hard for us, you know.
Well, as your line is,
dogs and the pigs.
No one is allowed to do anything specifically for black people in this world. To quote the good brother Kaba, that is the first sign you're in trouble. But anyway, speaking of people who do things for Black people specifically and African people broadly speaking. Our next guest. So let's take a quick break and we're gonna come right back and get to Dr. Kambon right here at I Mix What I Like.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
All right, everybody. So among many other things, our next guest, Dr. Ọbádélé Bakari Kambon, is a senior research fellow at the University of Ghana in the Institute of African Studies. He is a PhD in linguistics. His whole graduate studies involve linguistics, and he, speaking multiple languages, several African languages in particular. He gained some notoriety to a certain extent a couple of years ago for his repatriation to Ghana under the idea that there's no reason to suffer white supremacy, at least specific or directly. So why not, submerge within an African context? And it looks like we just lost him, his connection, that is. As I was getting his intro together, he dropped off. But let me what I'll do is at least put this up. And in the show notes already are links to not only his bio page here, but also to his television platform, Abibitumi TV, Abibitumitv.com. Which we'll hopefully be able to talk with him about as well shortly. In particular, we wanted to talk with him and are hoping to talk with him about his approach to the ancient history, the African origins of Pan-Afrikanism, and his views of the Pan-African struggle today. And it looks like we got him back here. Dr. Kambon, greetings to you. Good morning, at least as it is over here. And welcome to the program. It's good to see you.
Good to be seen. Good to see you as well. Glad I could make it today. I actually just sat down in my office coming from driving, dropping off the children. So I was like, no, I'm about to be late. Got to get up here and make the show. So.
No, I appreciate that. So wherever we are in the diaspora, there is always a need to drop the children off, and it's the same struggle everywhere. Dr. Kambon, first of all, I need to shout out the I Mix What I Like crew, Josh and Aaliyah, who wanted to make sure we reached out to you and had you on. I'm thankful for them to having done that. It's long overdue. Got a number of questions for you to have, start off this conversation, but I did want to just start with where I left off just a moment ago and trying to put your bio together. That is your repatriation.
That's right.
Back to the continent. So before we get into anything else, could we talk a little bit about that? Why did you end up making that move? Where were you starting from on this side? Why the move back over there? And ultimately, I'd want to know what that's been like.
All right, absolutely. So I'll give you a little bit of the background and peace to Brother Kaba, Abibi Fahodie.
Abibi Fahodie, brother.
Yeah, blessed. Want to acknowledge you there as well. So a little bit of the background. Back in 1972, my mother first came to Ghana, and she came on a chartered flight with Nana Dinizulu. For those who may be familiar with Nana Dinizulu, who is credited for bringing the Akan spiritual system, back to those of the diaspora. And then I was born in 79. So of course, this is before I was even on the scene. But then my mother, got her PhD in psychology. And there was a movement of African-centered psychologists who realized that, psychology, quote unquote, Western trained psychology is not adequate to deal with African people from a holistic standpoint. So she started her initiation as an Okomfo, which is a traditional diviner healer in the Akan spiritual system. And she was training at Medema outside of Kumasi. From there, she brought me to Ghana for my first time in 98. And that was on the Sankofa journey. For those who are interested, you can check out the site. It has some of the background information there, sankofajourney.com. And so that was 98. By 99, I was really into it. I wanted to learn the language. I was serving as her Ochiame, which is a spokesperson in the traditional setting. And then by 2000, I did a year of study abroad here at the University of Ghana. So that was my junior year. I was an undergrad at Morehouse College in Atlanta. So, fast forward, I ended up going back to Atlanta and taking Medu with Okunini, that's Dr. in Chi, Mario Beatty, and all of the connections I was making between Chi and Medu. He was like, you got to go to grad school for this. And I was like, well, I'm not so sure. He was like, yo, you're going. Now I'd seen lectures of Nana John Henrik Clark, who said, we got to make a priesthood of this. We got to assign people, do this, do that. So I was like, well, I guess I got my assignment. So I ended up going to University of Wisconsin-Madison, of all places, which was the only PhD in the country of African language and literature. But what I ended up doing is getting a master's there in African language and literature, another master's in linguistics. But I decided I wanted to do my PhD here on the continent. Now, in between that, I moved to Chicago. I had done the 2 masters. I was teaching at various institutions in Chicago, Northeastern Illinois University, Malcolm X College, where else? Chicago State, Betty Shabazz, just everything that was African-centered in all of Chicago, I was teaching there basically. And while I was teaching there, I was also doing survival training. And part of survival training, we would take some of the, quote unquote, inner city youth, quote unquote, at-risk youth, because I was teaching at alternative high schools. And for those who don't know, the alternative high school is basically the holding pen between school and prison. This is, the students who are either, tend to be drug sellers or, all type of stuff. But we would take, students like that. We would take students mainly at Betty Shabazz International Charter School. We would take them out into the wilderness, teach them wild food foraging. We would teach them fire making, teach them shelter construction, just, a whole variety of skills. And coming back from one of the encampments, I was driving with my wife. We were on the south side of Chicago at night, and we would always be armed at the encampments. So whether it's a crazy person in the woods or a bear, there's no call to police, 100 miles away from anything. So we're always the ones who secure our campsite. So long story short, the police stopped us. We had a broken turn signal, which was from a crash. We just got the insurance check. It was somebody else's fault. Just got the insurance check, but the police said, we're going to go on a fishing hunt. So they went on the fishing hunt. They looked through everything. They didn't find anything. And then they looked into the trunk. They put me and her in the squad car, looked into the trunk. And then, they found it was a 357 Magnum, Trooper Mark III. I remember the weapon very well. So it was a Trooper Mark III. I really missed that weapon. But anyway, they put me into a squad car. They were like, all right, well, you're going downtown. So, they take us in or take me in. They actually just, drop my then pregnant fiance on the side of the road and say, hey, figure it out. So long story short, we were able to get a lawyer, beat the case on the illegal search and seizure that, they had no right to go into the trunk. And they even lied about it. They said, oh, we didn't even go into the trunk. Now, we produced at one of the hearings the police car key. We're like, if you didn't go into the trunk, then how do we get this? Oh, it was like something out of a movie, a TV, lawyer series or whatever. So then they spent the entire rest of the trial trying to explain why we have their police car key, but that wasn't even the crux of the story. The crux of the story is we went back and got an eyewitness, Mr. John Dean. I still remember him. So he came and testified. And based on that, the judge out in Bridgeview is known for having like a 99.9999999 conviction rate, because all the Chicago people, they send them out to Bridgeview to get lynched, the legal lynching system. Because if they don't convict you, they're going to get you to plea. And we're like, we're not pleading. The whole thing was illegal. So we, decided to go forward, with the motion. And the judge, on the final day said, I don't find the police's story to be credible. I believe you all. So that was it. So got off of that. But while I was on the witness stand in that exchange, I said that no more will I allow myself to be in their jurisdiction. And I said within 1 year, I'm going to repatriate to Ghana. So that's what I did. That was 2008. I repatriated to Ghana. I've been here ever since. One of my life goals is to never set foot on United States soil again. And again, you know, when I look at, and I caught the tail end of what you all were talking about before, when you look at Ahmaud Arbery, when you look at, you know, if we just go down the list of all of those who have been shot, from Oscar Grant to Sean Bell to, you know, you name it, you know, they're able to do what they're able to do because while we're over there, it's very much like shooting fish in a barrel, right? However, once we're not in their jurisdiction, we're able to at least get a little bit of leeway to make other moves, you know, apart from that. And one time I was holding my son, who's now 8 years old, and we were at Abri Botanical Gardens, and he was sleeping, you know, right there on my lap. And, you know, I said, he will not be shot, you know, playing with a toy gun. You see what I'm saying? So when we talk about quality of life, one of the things is freedom from fear. And I submit that as long as we are there in the United States of a murderer, that is very difficult for us to have freedom from fear, and is normative. We don't even realize that when you're driving on the highway and you're cranking your neck left and right to see if police are on the intermedian. That's not a normal thing. And it wasn't until I was here and I was like, I realized that I wasn't cranking my neck. I was like, why would I ever do that? That's not even a normal thing. Or the police start pulling up behind you and they're driving behind you for 1 or 2 miles and your heart is beating in your chest. That when you're here, you realize that that feeling is no more. Even if the police are behind you, you know, they're just trying to get around you to go and do their own thing. They don't even have tickets, right? And they're going to issue you. So there are lots of things, you know, following you around the store. There are lots of things that you know, people call it, you know, quote unquote, microaggressions or whatever. But there are things that we get used to there in the snakes that once we're in the land of Black people, which was, you know, in Chi, we call it Abibitumi. That's the way to say Africa is Abibitumi. Literally, it translates to the land or nation of Black people. You know, we realize that a lot of the things that we consider to be normal, like Black people getting shot and wondering, are the police going to get off or will they get a slap on the wrist? Like, these are not normal things. So that's, you know, I'll kind of summarize so we can dive deeper if you want. But that's how I ended up here.
Oh, but brother Kambon, Kim Potter got convicted. The white boys in Georgia got convicted. Right. It's all good. We got rid of Trump. You can
so
come on back.
Come back.
Come on back. You guys are calling me Mr. Smith. I'm trying to get Neo back in the Matrix. Just to go back where we started the show anyway. But anyway, yeah. I did want to ask though, I mean, you know, because we do often hear a lot about the utopian visions that diasporan Africans have of the continent. And that things aren't always so perfect for diaspora Africans when they return, or just life in general on the continent is not so perfect. You've described an already a much improved situation, never mind getting into any other details of society. But how do you respond? What would you say to folks who raise, you know, oh man, he you know, he's painting fantasies about going back home, you know?
Right. Yeah. So, you know, I hear everything from utopian to dystopian, because sometimes, you know, people, you know, I joke like people are at the shore with binoculars. Like, is it perfect yet? Oh yeah, well, call me back when it's perfect. All right, is it perfect yet? Okay, well, call me back when it's perfect. And, you know, I'm like, well, you're supposed to be part of making it perfect, right? If we want the land of Black people to be the land of Black people once again, instead of the land of De Beers stealing, you know, blood diamonds and Halliburton stealing blood coltan and Shell stealing blood oil. If we want this to be the land of Black people once again, as it was 4,000, 5,000 years ago, when we called it Kemet, which is again the land of Black people, then we're the ones who are going to actually make that happen. So I'll give you, for instance, an initiative that we started right here. I'm at the Institute of African Studies here at the University of Ghana. So we had a series of meetings. We called the executive secretary to one of them. He went to the president, and from there they restored our Ghanaian citizenship. That was 2016. And that's an initiative that we started right here. And now all over the continent, people are talking about, you know, citizenship in Gambia, Sierra Leone. But that started in this little teeny tiny broom closet that I pretend as the office right here at African Studies. So I can see that if I wasn't here, you know, putting in work, then that's something that wouldn't have taken shape, at least as it has taken shape. So this is my Ghana card, you know, for whatever that's worth. So right now, as I sit here, I'm a Ghanaian citizen. My wife is a Ghanaian citizen. My parents just repatriated about 2 weeks ago. They're Ghanaian citizens.
Oh, wow.
All my children are Ghanaian citizens.
Wow.
My sister also repatriated. She's a Ghanaian citizen.
Mm-hmm.
We've roofed our house. We're planning on moving in within the next 3 months. So these are the things that, we're doing on the ground. Another example I could give you, we had this campaign, Gandhi Must Fall. So everybody here on campus.
So I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming. I know.
You took down the statue and everything. You messing with like
statue.
not the Mahatma.
We took down the statue because that's what everybody thought. Everybody was like, "This guy is great. Oh, he's the peace lover. He inspired all of the heroes that they allow us to have, from Martin Luther King to Nelson Mandela. He's the greatest ever." So what we did is we let people know who he was in relation to Black people, both during his time in Umzansi, what they call South Africa, and then his time, oppressing the Dalits, the Black untouchables of India once he went back to India. So that's the thread that runs through his entire life, is being anti-Black and pro-Indo-Aryan, right?
Can I just tell you real quick?
Okay.
His son came to my undergrad to speak years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And during the Q&A, I hit him with the Dr. Clark. I quoted Dr. Clark. I said,
that's what got me started.
Because he was there to speak on Dr. King's day or whatever. So they were obviously making that connection, Gandhi to King. And I said, Dr. Clark and others have described Gandhi, your father, as primarily an East Indian nationalist,
right,
who was being taken up by integrationists. This is how I phrased the question too. I was looking back. I was like, yeah, that was funny. But the point was, his response was, you're right.
Right.
He said, yes, my father he was primarily working for his people. He was not looking to integrate into some British empire. Now, we didn't get into, I don't think I knew at that time.
Not even just fighting for Indians or fighting for Indian nationalism, fighting for upper caste Hindus. And, I would say the distinction needs to be made, because when you read Ambedkar, his contemporary, he's very clear, and he says, to quote, that Gandhi is the worst enemy of the untouchables. You understand? When you go into the writings of others, specifically the Dalits, but then also look at his relationship to Adivasis, to Siddhis, to other Black groups that are there, it's very clear. Like, people just lump Indians like, oh, all Indians are holding hands singing Kumbaya. But once you really get into it, read what Congress and Gandhi have done to the untouchables, and you'll get a very, very good sense of, not even Indian nationalists would be the most accurate. But I will say Nana John Henry Clark is who got me started, because I was listening. I'm not sure if it was a Great and Mighty Walk or a different talk, but he said Gandhi was a fraud, a faker, and a liar, and so forth. So before I heard that talk, I'm like, I saw the movie. I thought he was all cool. This is like 91, 92. So I started to look into it. Baba Ranoko Rashidi, Nana Ranoko Rashidi, a recent ancestor, he started sharing information about, this day a Dalit woman got burned alive for asking for wages. This day, there was another pogrom where they went through the Dalit community and, massacred 100 of them. Like, every single day he's sending news from India, and we're really getting a sense. And Ambedkar also made this link between the plight of the Dalits in India and then the plight of Black people in the US. And he said that what Gandhi is doing with regard to India is similar to what Abraham Lincoln did with regard to the Black people, that he's trying to keep his nation state together to prevent the Dalits from escaping Hinduism the same way, Lincoln was just trying to keep the Union together. He didn't care about the Black people. He was just trying to accomplish his task. So, I'll let you continue, but I did want to insert that.
No, that was it. That was it.
Right?
I just wanted to share that one quick story about his son acknowledging, not to that level of detail, but and to make the point that they continue. I know this is 20 years ago, but continue to try to make that King to Gandhi, thing. Yeah. But
now, interestingly,
go ahead.
I have a paper that I'm working on, and it's a tricontinental analysis, and you may find this interesting. But basically looking at apartheid, integration, and untouchability. So apartheid is South Africa, Umzansi. And basically the crux of the paper is that when your enemies do the diagnosis, then they'll give you cures that do not cure, right? So in Umzansi, what they call South Africa, they say that your problem is apartheid. you're apart from your white oppressors. So if that's the diagnosis, well, what's the solution? We're going to let y'all get closer to them. However, what I submit is the issue in Umzansi has been and continues to be genocide. Genocide, not, in just the general sense, but if we look at the UN definition of genocide, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, bringing about conditions to destroy the group in whole or in part, preventing births within the group, and then forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. So we're actually looking at this as
cultural imposition too.
That's there as well. That you could call it culture side. But looking at it, from this definition, then the problem is genocide. And if we diagnose it that way, then we get an entirely different, solution to the problem. But that's the diagnosis of the enemies of Black people who are there in Umzansi. Now let's come to the United Snakes. The problem apparently is segregation. We're apart from these genocidal mass murderers. It's like somebody comes into your house with a butcher knife. And you're saying, you know what the problem is? You haven't given him a hug. You need to get closer to the murderer who's come through and chop your grandma's head off, and blah. Like getting closer to your genocidal mass murderer, psychopathic racial personality.
What's that?
Bobby Wright is not going to help you.
No, sorry. What is that I don't know what you call it, proverb about the trees seeing the axe handle and saying he's one of us?
Exactly, right. So that's Nigbati Akewonu Igbo Okonino Won Igisope Ewo Ihekure Loje Okonino Wa. That's Yoruba. That and it goes just like that. When the axe entered the forest, one of the trees said, "Look, the handle is one of us." And that's exactly, what we have going on. So again, looking at desegregation, if that's your analysis, and Nana Amos Wilson is very clear on this. If that's your analysis, well, then what's the problem? What's the solution? The solution is to get closer to the ones you're segregated from. That means the solution is integration. But if the problem is genocide, then you have to entertain an entirely different set of solutions. And then also looking at India, they say untouchability. You're not allowed to touch these upper caste Hindus. Well, then what's the solution to now allow them to come in and drink water, come into the temples? Now you can touch us. But again, there as well, the issue is genocide. And then, we close out the article with when our enemies decide who our heroes are. And in all three places, we have our enemies doing that selection for us. So in the United Snakes, our hero of all heroes is who? Martin Luther King. But if we chose our hero for ourselves, our hero might be Nana Nat Turner. Our hero might be Nana Charles Deslons. Our hero might be, Nana Denmark Vesey or Nana Gabriel Prosser or any others, right? Or Nana Malcolm X or anybody. That's if we choose for ourselves. Go to Umzansi. They choose who? Nelson Mandela, also inspired by Gandhi, right? So if we choose, and people say that Mandela sold out once he went to prison. And I would submit for those who have read, I may have this book here, The Land is Ours. And that's by, that's right here. Let me just pull it off for those who may be interested. This is by Nana Mangaliso Sobukwe, The Land is Ours. And it's basically a set of the trial hearings. Most of what we hear from him is in the case of the trial that came out with the Sobukwe clause. And essentially what he argues is that in the Cliptown Charter, what they call the Freedom Charter, the ANC had long capitulated and said the land is for everybody. The land is for whoever happens to be in South Africa, whether it's Dutch Boers, whether it's Britishers, whether it's East Indians, whoever it is, they said the land is ours. And that's the Freedom Charter that, is there for the ANC. And that's long before Mandela went to prison. And that's the key point because the PAC and Nana Mangaliso Sobukwe said the land is ours. It's land for Black people. It's the Black people's land. Whereas the ANC said, no, the land is for whoever's here, right? But again, if we chose our own heroes, it wouldn't be Nelson Mandela, perhaps. It might be Nana Mangaliso Sobukwe. It might be Nana Steve Biko. It might be Nana Bambata, right? It might be any of those who fought against, the colonizing enemies of Black people. I say colonial enemies. Here they say colonial masters. I say that's not accurate. We need to say colonial enemies. And then again, if we look at India, again, who's a hero that they prop up for us? Nobody but Gandhi himself. Whereas if we chose our own heroes, we may choose Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar. We might choose Gangu Baba. And as I mentioned the names, most people don't even know who they are. but it lets you know that we have to choose our own heroes. And that's really what the whole statue issue was about.
They didn't get a movie. They didn't get a movie. Ben
movie.
Kingsley didn't play them in a movie. That's not our fault.
You have to know that the movie was financed by India, and India is using soft power. These Gandhi statues and busts and Gandhi convention centers are about soft power in their proxy war with China over who's going to control the continent now known as Africa, because everybody in the world knows that whoever controls this continent controls the entire world. So China's soft power is Confucius Institute. India's soft power is Gandhi, and they finance that Gandhi movie. So it's not, an objective anything. This is a piece of propaganda, and it's part of what Nana Marimba Ani calls a rhetorical ethic, what my own father, Baba Kamal Kambon, calls contrary diction, which is saying one thing and doing another. The same time that they put out Gandhi as a face of peace and India's face of peace is the same time that they're warmongering, that they're the number one importer of arms in the entire world. And they have been so ever since Modi has been in power. So it's say one thing, peace, peace, peace. Meanwhile, stockpile of weapons, let's get ready to go to war with China over the resources on the continent. And that's what it's all about.
I mean, that reminds me of what you said, a couple of things. I know Baba Baruti says that enemies don't share heroes. And then another thing, I think it was Malcolm who was saying, I think he was talking about that speech when he was talking about the March on Washington. And he mentioned that there was too many people you were too happy to be fighting for a revolution. There's too much smiling.
Revolution without bloodshed.
Yeah, exactly.
No revolution.
That ain't no revolution. I'm just losing. I'm about to have a revolution here with this screen.
The camera's revolving around.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, interesting. So one thing I always say is that, their heroes are our enemies, and our heroes are their enemies, right? So anyone who we think is a hero, they say that's an enemy. So none of Colin Ferguson, they was like, oh no, he's horrible. Whoever it is, we can just list them out, and those are on my wall of ancestors and wall of heroes. But meanwhile, anyone who they say is a hero from Christopher Columbus on, and beyond, Cecil Rhodes, they got a Rhodes Scholarship. Like all of these things, these are the worst, most despicable scum of the earth that we can ever imagine, but that's their heroes. And they're putting the statues up 24/7.
You're in Ghana now, and I know a lot of times when I hear about people repatriating, there's always like this response, typically, that you can't run, you're running away from the struggle. The whites are running Africa. They Africom, so on and so forth. Ghana is one of the major places where they have all these military bases, United States military bases. What is your response to that?
Yeah, it's very interesting that if we want it to be different, then we're the ones who are going to make it different. But what I say, you have a lot of people in the United Snakes who are lying to themselves. Why do I say are lying to themselves? Because they would say, or they do say that they're, fighting for the cause, but I would say that there's a difference between financing and fighting. And that is to say, let's say you got people who are at a protest march. As soon as they're at the protest march, what are they doing but building cracker institutions and building the cracker nation? How are they doing that? Because everybody got to get some new shoes, they got to get some new sneakers to march in. So you already know, as soon as there's a protest march, everybody's going to go down to the mall, invest in Nike, Adidas, and everything else, New Balance sneakers, right? That's one. And then everybody got to go to Home Depot. Why? So they can get the signboards and, do everything. So again, Home Depot is going to do what? Take that exact same money, flip it to buy, the bullets that shoot us down the streets and build the prisons, right? That are going to lock up, our nieces and nephews. And then on top of that, what are they going to do? They're going to be at the march taking selfies and posting it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then raising their stocks up. And basically to the point that everything that we do when we're in the United Snakes is financing the exact same enemy that we're supposed to be fighting. Every time that we drink a sip of water, every time that we pay a car note, a mortgage, and anything else, we're buying the bombs that they're going to drop here on the continent. We're literally financing the world's criminal organization that's going to go through and do what they did, for example, in the Chagos Islands. For those who are interested, you can check out a documentary called Stealing a Nation. And it really goes into how the United Snakes of a murderer went in and took that land from Black people so that it could be, a military base there. So what I would say is those who are over there really have to be clear that where they are is not the front lines. They're deep behind enemy lines. And being deep behind enemy lines, it requires a certain level of compromise. So everybody who's rah, 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 I know that a lot of people's heart is in the right place. But let's say your heart is in the right place and you're in the World Trade Center, you know, helping the financial transactions of this global hegemony of the United States. So, you know, when it hits the fan, whether it's an inside job or outside job, the very fact that you're in there working for your enemies, you're in the house. When it's time, you know, snake gonna eat whatever in the belly of the frog. When it's time to burn down the plantation, if you was in the house, you know, shining massive shoes at that time, well, guess what? You know, that's not necessarily gonna work out well for you. That's on the one side. And then over here, again, this is not a utopia. And if it's not a utopia, we can't keep, you know, being on the shore like, oh, is it perfect yet? Is it perfect yet? If we don't want there to be United States military base, I've written an article on that as well, then we have to be the ones who speak about it. And, you know, with a conceptual framework, I use the snake, right? Not an Oscar Brown Jr. who wrote that basically, all right, you allow the snake into your home, the snake is going to bite you. So we're the ones who know better, who are going to do better, or who are going to have any role in changing things. So now I did that with a student who's now in political science, right? He'll come out and become a politician, and he has a different worldview. So basically, again, you got to kind of be in it to win it. If we want, you know, the continent not to be, you know, populated by sellouts, house Negroes, coons. Here I am at the University of Ghana. But if I want the University of Ghana to be anything different, then I have to play my role. You know, this other person has to play their role. And not saying that, you know, anyone who happens to be from the continent is automatically going to just be towing the line, because you got continental Africans who are more about revolution than people I know who repatriated. I know some sellouts, coons, and house Negroes who work right here where I work, who repatriated. So, you know, just to give that distinction and let people know that it's not necessarily about, okay, the person is running away. One thing that we can do is actually build the continent as a base of power. And this is one thing that, you know, most people have seen throughout the years, from Nana Marcus Garvey, Nana Martin Delaney, and we can go down the whole list.
So it's been brought to my attention that we might disagree on the role or value of cryptocurrency. So, so I'm happy to discuss that. But I'm actually wanting to get to something I think is I actually think is more important, which is something that you touched on already, even in speaking a little bit of Yoruba earlier. That is, you know, even as somebody who's, you know, horribly monolingual, you know, a little bit of Spanish maybe, but no African languages, you know, what is the value of knowing African? I mean, I remember like the late James Spady tore me up. He said, you'll never understand Cheikh Anta Diop because you don't read Arabic, you don't read French, you don't read, you know, so you're not going to know those original journals. Now, those aren't African languages, obviously, but the point of the importance of not only being multilingual, but knowing African languages and the role that plays in revolution. I'd be interested in hearing you talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, interestingly, about 2 weeks ago, you know, we have community building initiatives here on the ground in Ghana. And one thing that we were doing on a regular Friday meeting that we have, we were listening to Nana John Henrik Clarke. And in it, Nana John Henrik Clarke was talking about, oh, in Africa, there was no word for this or there was no word for that. And as I'm sitting there, because I know various languages, I actually know the word for this, I know the word for that. And I was thinking, you know, he's one of our most esteemed ancestors. And I was thinking how much more powerful it would have been if he would have actually learned, you know, languages, these various languages, so that then he could be speaking with authority that there is this word, there is not that word. In the context he was talking about, he was like, there's no word for, and I think we've all heard him say this, there was no word for prison because we've never had a prison. So what I actually did is I actually knew the word in Chi, Achirekrum, and this would be a place where those who had committed whatever offenses were taken to, you know, stay at this place where they would be used for, you know, sacrifice, you know, at a Kwazide or so forth and so on. And there's another place, it was called Antiade, which is didn't listen to a thing. And it says, that if we give you advice and you don't listen, you go to didn't listen to a thing, which is the name of the place. And I also looked at Kemet, that, you know, there's a word in Kemet as well. And, you know, I pulled that up and we were going through the terms there. There's a text. It was actually translated by Yoporika, so may have been translated many times. But in the text, it says, bring me a prisoner so that you can test out. Basically, the background was, here's a magician who was said to be the most powerful, that he could cut the head off of a human being, restore it back, and nothing would happen. So they said, well, let's try it out. So he says, bring me a prisoner from the prison. So he goes and brings him a prisoner. He's able to do what he had done with, an animal before successfully. But just the fact that he can say, bring me a prisoner. And then there's a whole social context, which is very similar to the Akan context, where you would have somebody who either escaped from military duty or escaped from, their duties for farming. Like, there are different things that could get the person in. Or if the person themselves absconded, then that person's family would be put, in this type of place. So, that was just one of a couple of examples of what he had said. This doesn't exist. And what I would say, even to that point, I would grant that the equal sign can be very problematic if we give a direct equal sign between the concept in the cracker language versus a concept in our own language. But, again, he didn't reference these places and, these types of points. And I wouldn't think that he would he would know what they are unless you know a language. So just saying all of that to say, as a very recent example that came up, that knowing the languages helps us to become much more in depth with what are the precedents, and what are the precedents on the one hand in terms of things that we should follow, but then also on the other hand of things that we shouldn't follow. Yeah, we did do that, but is that going to help us in our current context get to our Abibifahodie, Black liberation? If it doesn't, then, we got to take another look at it. And as Nana Amos Wilson would say, even what the Africans did must come under scrutiny. He says, people say, well, that's why the Africans did it. Like, that's supposed to be the end of the discussion. Like, no, we got to keep going and say, because even you may find some continental Africans in what's now, Senegambia may have done things one way. But if we decide that that's not the way that's going to be most in alignment with our liberation, then we may need to look at what people were doing in Tanganyika or anywhere else. Right. So just to that point. And I know you asked about crypto. We had a recent discussion. There was this one guy, who was very much part of the work that we were doing. And like, he was just like, yo, crypto is bad, blah, blah, blah. Now, mind you, this is a person who claimed to be a communist. And, my question to him was, well, what currencies are you interested in using? All right, you got cryptocurrency. Because all of us know very much about, the creature from Jekyll Island, right? We're aware of Federal Reserve notes. So the same person who's like rah, rah, rah against crypto is working at, whatever supermarket, and he's getting Federal Reserve notes. I'm like, how can you have a communist who is, backing the slave masters on these dollar bills, right? So basically, it was a case of cognitive dissonance, where you have somebody who is like, all right, don't use this currency. But then we're like, all right, so what currency will you want us to use? Now, meanwhile, whatever currency we're using the currency to forward the Black liberation agenda, whether that's buying land, whether that's building libraries here, all the things that we're doing. So it's like, all right, are you going to privilege one currency over another currency, or are you not going to use any currency whatsoever? But what I found in the case of that person in particular, it was a case of, once again, the rhetorical ethic of saying one thing and doing another, saying that you're, so you need to maintain your purity to the point that you can't use that currency, but at the same time you're using another currency that's at the very least equally bad, if not 1,000 times more bad than the currency that you're trying to stay pure from. So for me, that currency or this currency, if we're going to use Deutschmarks, if we're going to use euros, if we're going to use Ghana cedis, if we're going to use US dollars, I'm not an advocate of any of those. But what I would say that there's a proverb. It basically goes to the effect of the baboon sees his neighbors behind, but never his own. Or in Chi, that when working on the side of the mountain, one person doesn't look at another person's buttocks, because everybody's buttocks are, exposed, to that degree. So, what I took the person's whole argument for was basically finding an excuse to evade and escape responsibility. We're supposed to be building the Black nation, but the person's like, only if you use this currency will we build the Black nation. If you won't use this currency, then I'm going to go back to my job at Walmart. Mind you, this person's about to get evicted from his house. He's about to be whatever, and you're nitpicking over what currency we're about to use. So that's my point on that. For me, I haven't invested in cryptocurrency. I know people who have, and I know people who've actually financed some of the moves that we've made here on the ground. But to that point again, people will find any excuse to evade responsibility, just so that they can now say, look, I'm purer than everybody who's using that currency. Meanwhile, they're spending US dollars at Walmart every day. I'm like, that's just straight BS. It's hypocrisy. It's the rhetorical ethic.
So it sounds more to me, I won't belabor the point for right now, but it sounds to me more like you just ran into somebody who makes a bad argument as opposed to the argument itself being bad. In other words, for a communist's concern wouldn't be what currency is being used. It would be how is wealth being produced, defined, and redistributed, and where's the political power in all of that. So if the argument is a fidelity to the U.S. or to some established currency, that's obviously not the solution. But from my perspective, the claim, my argument comes as a response to the opposite claim that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency can be used as a revolutionary tool, and I'm saying that to me is the fantasy. Anything that encourages currency or finance over political power is mistaken. That what we need is political power, so that we can the form of currency and what becomes currency either is moot or self-defined, and then redistributed, so there's no inequality, there's no levels of poverty. So
just real quick to that point.
Sure.
Whether it's communism, whether it's socialism, whether it's capitalism, all of these, in my humble opinion, are cracker ideologies. And to take any of them up, is fraught with, problems. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, to come back to the currency, what I'm talking about is the person's behavior. That I know that this person is using US dollars, they're using Federal Reserve notes. So while they're railing, and it wasn't to me, they were railing against another person who's using cryptocurrency, I know what this person is using. I know that every single day, this person who is so ideologically pure on the one hand is using Federal Reserve notes every single day. So he's talking about this person saying you can't use that as a means or whatever for liberation, blah, 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 blah. All right, so what is it that you are using on a day-to-day basis? So just saying to the point that it's not so much about the person's argument, it's about to what degree is your behavior in alignment with what it is that you're talking about.
Oh, but it's the same thing. Like I don't believe in cryptocurrency as a solution or Bitcoin as a solution, but I still engage in exchange of the US dollar because I'm not politically free. I'm not free. But so that's what I'm saying. It's not that I'm trying to be.
People who are using the cryptocurrency aren't free.
I'm sorry.
So I'm saying, and by the same token, the people who are using the cryptocurrency are not free. By the same token, the people who are using the Ghana cedi aren't free. By the same token, the people who are using the Naira are not free. But again, to take this position as though, all right, those people who are using cryptocurrency aren't free. But then it comes back to what are you doing, right? And if you're doing something that's better, show me what it is that you're doing that's better, and then we'll follow behind what you're doing. Because for me, it was just an excuse to evade responsibility. Yeah, it's an excuse to say I'm not building with y'all people because I'm ideologically pure. I'm this, I'm that. And I'm like, I know what you're doing, and I know exactly what you do on a day-to-day basis. I know where you work. I know that you're about to get evicted. I know all these things about you. So if you have a better behavior, let your ideology or ideological, meanderings be in alignment with the better behavior that you're going to show us the way, because that cryptocurrency is not freedom, is not liberation. Whatever fiat currency is not Federal Reserve notes. None of those things are liberation. So It's a moot point. It's I don't know, soapboxing and grandstanding about something that is a diversion at best. But what's the end result of your taking us off on that diversion? You going back to be off in the corner, not doing anything. I'm talking about in the case of the person who I'm talking about in this specific context, not you specifically.
No, I hear it's so good.
I agree that, and I know for me, all of these things. I think what I hear you saying, brother Ọbádélé, is that all of these things are tools, and I think you made a very important point of distinction when there's some people who believe that crypto is revolutionary, and it's not. Just no more than the dollar is revolutionary. I think if you engage
on par, same level, if not one is worse than the other, but That's the
listen,
whole point.
I have invested in crypto. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, I have. Now I know that it is not really. I'm not pushing it though and saying I don't push it at all. I've invested in it, but I'm not pushing it and saying that it's liberation because I know it's not. It's just another form of currency, and ultimately any form of currency that we don't control is going to be used against us, can be used against
Absolutely.
us, and we cannot be beholden to any of it.
We've got to be very clear
and
on
that
that.
was my only reason for even engaging it. It was for that simple fact that it is just another form of currency that ultimately is not controlled by us.
Now-
So I'm going to use it as a form
Now
of
let's
currency.
stop
And at the
there.
end of the day, the person who was
Let-
making the argument did not give a list of the currencies that are now ideologically pure. I don't know if he's using the ruble, the Russian ruble. I don't know what the guy's using, but he never came back with the solution of, all right, well, which currency do we use?
Brother Kambon, I want to move because we only have a little bit of time left, so I
No
want to
problem.
leave. I want to stay on that platform where we're all in agreement on controlling the currency. And I hope, and I would only want to say that it just sounds. I get where you are on the isms, but this person sounds particularly inept at defending their position.
He's
So
very inept.
okay,
Not just in terms of defending the position, but in terms of behaving in a way that's better than what he is
right on.
disparaging.
All right, so
that's my key point. Like, what behavior are you doing that's better than the other people over here who you're poo-pooing? Because both of y'all, in my eyes, are on the exact same level. As a matter of fact, one may be a little bit better than the other one, but at the end of the day, it's a diversion. It's an argument about something that is not even the point.
So there are at least two overlapping topic areas I wanted to broach with you before we wrap this morning. One involves two of the things that you're involved in. One involves the condition and current state of Black studies, and the other in terms of your Abibitumi platform and the importance of digital social education. It sounds like there might be a continuing thread between the two, but talk a little bit about where you see each. That is the state of Black studies or African studies, and this digital educational endeavor that you're engaged in.
Very good. So when people one thing that I realized, and this is after repatriating, is that for people on the continent, there's a difference between Black and African. Like for me and many others like me, like when we say African, we're only talking about Black people. But when you come here, you realize that when people say African, they're not talking about Black people. They're talking about whoever happens to be on the continent. And that's referred to as continentalism. To the degree that, and I wrote an article on this, that Haiti applied to join the AU in 2016 and they were rejected on the basis of 29.1 of the AU's Constitutive Act that says only African states can belong to the African Union. Meanwhile, Morocco, where at that time they were enslaving almost 250,000 Black people, where the same word for a Black person enslaved is abid, right? The same year they applied to join the AU, and guess what? They were accepted on the basis of this is an African country. So again, there's this, divergence between, at least on the continent, between when they say African and when they say a Black person, that if you happen to be Black and you're not on the continent, then you're not African in their view. And it's not just a view, it's something that they actually are willing to set up structures, systems, and processes to enforce, in the sense of what we saw in the case of IT. So one thing that, was advocated by Nachimwezu is jettisoning the term Africa and African. And recently I gave a presentation at the University of Fort Hare. It was, an online thing where it was about Africology. So the argument that I made is that names are important and names can have an impact on your destiny. This is one thing that we know that's consistent with our worldview, which is why names are important on an individual level, but then also on a collective level. So if we call our studies Africology or African studies or anything along those lines, one, Africa is etymologically opaque. What does that mean? It means people don't know where it comes from. Even the Latins themselves were not clear on where it comes from. You have about 8 different theories of where the word comes from. Some say it comes from Ifriqiya, which is a Berber, group. Some people say it comes from Ifran, which is a set of caves in the Sahara. Some people say it comes from Aprike or Afrique, Greek and Phoenician, respectively, for sunny or without cold. Some people say it comes from Scipio Africanus, who defeated Cartatus. Some people say it comes from Leo Africanus. Like, you got all these different possible etymologies, but what they have in common is none of them tell you who the land is for. That's what they have in common. And beyond that, Latin, the English word comes through Latin, right? So here you have a term used by the Romans for their conquered province after the Second and Third Punic Wars. So after the Second and Third Punic Wars, they decided to call their conquered province of Cartatus, what they call Carthage, Provincia Africa Proconsularis, right? And that lets you know that, all right, this is the name of their province. Wherever it comes from, we don't know, but none of those names tell you. Some people say it comes Afrika, turn towards the Ka, that's Massey's position. You got all these things, but none of them tell you who the land is for. But meanwhile, Black people, anytime we conceptualize this land, we always conceptualize it as this is a land of Black people. The first time that we saw that is over 4,000 years ago, Kemet. We refer to the land as the land of Black people. You find the same thing in Chi, Abibitumi, again translates to land of Black people. And Yoruba, Ile Adulawo, again translates to the land of Black people. And Bamanakan, the Bambara language, you say Farafina, that's again land of Black people. And Wolof Real Nitkunyu is again land of Black people. In Kikongo, you have Nsia Bandombe as again land of Black people. In Igbo, you have Ala and DCOG as again land of Black people. And even non-Black people are unanimous because the Arabs will call it Bilada Sudan, which is land of Black people. This means all across so-called North Africa, they themselves are saying this is a land of Black people. The Greeks would say Ethiopia, land of those of burnt faces. The word Niger, where we get Niger and Nigeria, is again land of Black people. So just saying all of that to say what I advocated for was Sebayit Net Kametyu, which is studies of Black people, instead of Africology, because the ology is again Greek. It comes from logos, words, so forth and so on, extent. So I'm like, how do we have a study that's supposed to be about self-determination, and it's a Greco-Roman conceptualization? Part is Greek, part is Roman, and now, let's move forward in the world with that. I said we should use Sebayit Net Kametyu. They said, oh, you mean Kemetic studies? I said, no, Sebayit Net Kametyu, written in Medu Neter, just like it is. And that's what we should be working towards, studies of Black people regardless of location, instead of studies of location regardless of whether or not it's Black people we're dealing with.
So it sounds to me, I was just trying to, joke, like, it sounds to me like, well, now I don't even know what to say now. I was going to say, it sounds to me like African people were quite clear or about where to what the land referred. There seems to be a good deal of unanimity on that. But so is that then, I guess, your comment on the question of the state of Black or African studies?
Yeah, my comment on it is that African studies is in many ways what I refer to in one article that I wrote as aggressive ideological mimicry. Now, what is that? If you look in Pennsylvania, you have these two types of fireflies, Photurus and Photunus, and one is bigger than the other. So what the female does that's bigger is it lures in the male of the other species that's smaller. And then once it comes in, the smaller one thinks it's coming to get a mate. What it ends up is on the dinner plate, because the bigger one just, takes these lucibuffogens and eats it all up. And then that's the end of it. So basically what aggressive ideological mimicry, and this is in studies of ethology of aggressive mimicry, you make it look like one thing, and then when you come in, you get devoured. And what African studies is putting up a front to look like something revolutionary. When you get here, the Kwame Nkrumah chair where I am is funded by Anglo Gold Ashanti. The former director of Institute of African Studies said this building I'm sitting in right now was built by the Danes. And as Imahu Patel Tep said, he who it translates to he who listens to his belly belongs to the enemy. In Chi, they say, that if you eat in 30 houses, your mouth cannot be harsh. Or as Nana Thomas Sankara says, he who feeds you controls you. And what you find in African studies is that they'll have something about decolonization. They have, actually where I am right now, they have a project on decolonization that's funded by who? Mellon Foundation. This means they haven't even, decolonized their funding source, nor will they, because the point is to lure you in. There's another creature in the deep sea called an anglerfish. And what it does is it has these photobacteria in the Esca and Illyrium. And it just moves this dorsal fin, this modified dorsal fin back and forth, and it shines at the top. So now a squid comes, and what happens? it gets eaten up. And this is what happens is that we lure people in because it's African studies. That sounds revolutionary. But when you come in, you realize that all of the funding is coming from the enemies of Black people. And in doing so, they're able to control what you'll even talk about. So I haven't seen, we're funded by Anglo Gold Ashanti. I haven't seen anything about the role of Anglo Gold Ashanti in, taking people's land, and destroying the environment, with the different chemicals that they use in the mining process and, all these other types of things. And that's not going to happen because people realize that the money is very delicious. So for me, African studies as it stands now is one inappropriately named. That's the least of the problems, but more so at its very core is aggressive ideological mimicry. It's looking like one thing, but then actually, doing something vastly different.
Wow. Brother Kaba, any unfortunately we got to wrap here, but any last comments, questions, thoughts before we move on? This has been great. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I know there's one. I know there's one. Oh, go ahead, Baba.
Just real quick, I wanted to loop this in because I did hear you mention Abibitumi. That Abibitumi is a means by which we're able to get around the vectors of compromise. Now, what are the vectors of compromise? One is an ideological vector of compromise. So if you have somebody who's Black, but then they have an ideology that is given to them by their enemies, then they've been compromised to that degree. Another one is a religious vector of compromise. And I've written, in a couple of papers about this. This means if you have somebody who's rah for liberation, but then they got to turn and say, well, what does white Jesus think about that? They're already compromised. Another one, you have the monetary vector of compromise. That's literally selling out. This is, all right, we're all about Black liberation, but once they drop $1 million on the table in a briefcase, well, oh, Black what? What was that again? So you got all these different vectors of compromise. Another one is, you have the white mate vector of compromise. So you have somebody who's about Black liberation, but what are they going to do? Look at all the early liberation leaders. They're going to sick a white mate on them to now make them compromise their stance. And we have so many of the first presidents, in the wave of Black liberation movements, all of them married, white women. That becomes a vector of compromise. You have a political vector of compromise. So you have all these different vectors of compromise. And what all of them do is that they prevent us from being 100% about Black liberation, because in the back of our mind, we're thinking, well, what does my white this say about it? What does my white spiritual father say about this, and so forth and so on. So once we have Abibitumi, we have something that can be independent of that, where we don't have any funding from any cave beasts. We don't even let Neanderthals come onto the platform. And we can actually do things, if we say that we're going to discuss this topic, we can discuss that topic and nobody can say anything about it, because again, it's actually being about Black liberation instead of lip syncing about Black liberation, but really you're funded by the very enemies you're supposed to be fighting against.
I know another vector. Another vector would be education, and that's why so many of our people on the continent don't even identify as being Black. Because like you mentioned before about the Black land, a lot of our people on the continent don't identify as Black because of the fact that they've been miseducated, which is that another form of genocide, like they used to beforehand. Globally,
I would say globally, because you also got the rise of the term African American since 1988 and Jesse Jackson being bankrolled to push that term. You got Afro-Brazilian, Afro-Jamaican, you got everything, because what they realized, and this is what I refer to as the Dikenga theory of Black consciousness, that Dikenga is basically like this cycle. That's what you see on my bag here, right? This cycle of sunrise and sunset, that anytime we're in a similar condition, then we come to the realization that we're Black people. We need to come together on that basis. So classical Kemet, we came to that. Nana Steve Biko came to that independently. The Black people in Haiti came to that. The ones who got shipped there will call themselves Fon and Congo and Mina and whatever, but they realized, look, we're all Black people. Let's come together and whoop these cave beasts behind on that basis. Same thing in Jamaica. You had Nana Paul Bogle cleave to the Black. Same thing with the Black Power movement. Throughout space and time, anytime we're in a similar situation where we're surrounded by non-Black enemies, we come together on the basis of being Black. But this isn't even unique to Black people. Every intelligent social creature on the entire planet Earth does that. Whether it's killer whales, they come together on the basis of common ancestry and common descent. If it's hyenas, they come together on the basis of common ancestry and common descent. Whether it's salmon, well, whether it is whatever the creature is, wildebeest, all of them are very clear that, look, we have common enemies. whether it's famine, whether it's predators. Let's come together on the basis of what we have in common in order to defeat our common enemy.
I gotta say, I don't know if that one works as an analogy, because there's plenty of examples in nature of interspecies symbiotic relationships for survival. So I get your point, but I can't help it but have to have thought of that. But listen.
We can look at those.
I'm not offering that as to contradict your argument. I'm not trying to. Just to
make the point that creatures come together in herds, and that's not unique to Black people. That creatures come together in herds. That's not to say that there isn't any other creature that does anything else. There are some creatures that are loners. Polar bears are loners. Snow leopards are loners. But I'm talking about, we can look throughout nature of creatures coming together on the basis of what they have in common. That's not to say that there isn't any other model out there.
I just couldn't help. It just came. I couldn't let it go. But I definitely was not offering that as an argument against what you're saying. I get you.
You're good.
Yeah. But listen, before we leave, I definitely got to shout out Josh and Aaliyah, who worked with the program, who put this discussion together. I want to credit them for that, because I've greatly enjoyed it. And
Aaliyah was here, so shout out to Aaliyah. She was here a year or two ago.
Josh is here too. They're all here. I just wanted to acknowledge publicly that they did this, and the questions and all of that. It's been great. I look forward to doing it again. And Brother Kambon, I appreciate you, and best to you and yours, man.
Appreciate you having me. Abibitumi. So for those who are interested, I'm not on any non-Black owned social media, so you can't find me on anything not made by Black people. So you can find me on Abibitumi. That's spelled Abibitumi, and that translates to Black Power. Now, ironically, the same people who got issues with cryptocurrency ain't got problem with Facebook and YouTube and everything made by crackers, but we'll leave that alone. But you can find me on Abibitumi. You can find me on Soft Talk. That's a messaging app out of Nigeria made by Black people. You can find me on Onjos. That's a messaging app made by Black people out of Cameroon. You can find me on Social Africa. If it's made by Black people, that's where you can find me. If it's not made by Black people, that's where you can find the aggressive ideological mimicry people who are going to lure you in and then build that white institution and then build that white nation. We're not interested in building the white nation. We're interested in building up Kemet, Wahim Mesut Kemet. That's the rebirth of the land of Black people. And if we want that to come into being, it's not in anyone's magical hands, it's in our own hands.
Hey, right on. I love it. It's always good to be reminded of what you're not doing. So I appreciate you, my man. Take good care, and we'll look forward to doing this again. It's been a pleasure. Take good care.
I'll be before
Right on. All right, everybody. Again, thanks to Brother Kaba. Thanks to Brother Kambon, Josh, Aaliyah, everybody in the chat who will see this later. Appreciate you as well, and look forward to doing much more. And that's it. We just leave it there, Brother Kaba. What you got? You know what's coming up on Monday on your show? Has that been determined yet?
Yeah, I'm gonna be doing. I think I'm gonna be doing a simulcast with WBAI in New York on a Kwanzaa program, just dealing with Kwanzaa.
Right on
with BAI. So I'm supposed to be coordinated with them. So we're gonna get that popping today. And it looks to be pretty interesting. It'll be my first time being simulcast. They actually trust me enough to spread some of this good old Blackness.
They must not know.
To New York City.
They must not know.
Shout out to Katia Stitt.
Yeah, shout out to Katia and you. I don't remember that ever happening in all the years that I was there. I don't know. Did that ever happen? Maybe it did. I don't remember. But congratulations. That's going to be dope. I look forward to it. All right, everybody. Again, shout out to everybody. Appreciate all of you. I'll be back on Monday. Enjoy your winter solstice and Kwanzas and all of that good stuff. And as Fred Hampton used to say, peace if you're willing to fight for it. Catch you next time here at I Mix What I Like. Thanks again, everybody.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.